So now that we've finished programming our reader using a template, let me show you what we actually just programmed. If I expand the server room reader here, we've programmed from the template all of our contact points. We programmed the request to exit, we programmed the door contact, we programmed our push button override, and we programmed our interior push button. If for some reason we were programming a door that didn't match this template, we can always edit this from here. But it's important to use one of our predefined templates that supports pass-through if you want the pass-through feature. The feature that allows certain people to get through a door if we send a lockdown. If you don't use one of our predefined templates that support pass-through, then everybody will be locked out if you send a lockdown to a door. So we've programmed all of our contact points. We also programmed our go relay, the general output relay that unlocks the door, and we've also programmed an activate relay. In this template, the activate relay is a relay that would be connected to a sounder, an annunciator on the door. If this door is ever forced or held open, the bell is going to ring, the sounder will ring. So to show you how these things happen, we have in the background, we have what we call triggers. If I open up my request to exit, well, let's start with the door contact. If I open up the door contact and I click this little gear down here, we have triggers that we programmed on this door using our template. This top trigger says, when the door contact is ever forced or held open, we are going to energize the activate relay that turns on the bell. Now, how long do we do that? Let me open that up. We set the relay to energize forever. 0 equals forever. So right now, if the door is ever forced or held open, the relay is gonna energize the activate relay and the bell will ring. On a contact secure, so if the door contact is secured, then the way that we turn off the relay is we send another command to the door to say energize the activate relay for 1 more second. So we send another command to the door, the relay will energize for 1 more second, and then the bell will turn off. We can also use a trigger here that would say reset the relay to turn off the bell. There's lots of similar ways to do exactly the same thing using different triggers that we have in the software. But the way this comes to you by default, the way our templates are programmed, if the DoD, if the door contact reports a forced or held open, we're going to turn on that bell forever. When the door is closed, we'll send another command to turn the bell on for 1 more second, which will then turn off the bell. If we look at our triggers on, let's say, the request to exit, when somebody hits the request to exit, what do you want us to do? When somebody hits the request to exit, we disable the door contact so we don't get a door forced open. We disable the trigger on the door contact so the bell doesn't ring. The trigger that we're disabling here is the one that we just looked at. So the bell doesn't ring, we're going to disable that trigger on a contact active from the request to exit. We energize the relay to unlock the door, and we turn the LED green. Now, we've already spoken about the degraded mode features that we have in the reader interface. If the reader interface reports a contact active on the REX, it is firmware programmed that input number 1 will always fire relay 1 for degraded mode. So if the reader lost communication to the controller, somebody hits the request to exit, they can still get out of the door. Now, this template says activate the relay to unlock the door and also turn the LED green when the request to exit on input 1 gets a contact active. If you don't want the request to exit to energize the relay to unlock the door, maybe you have a motion sensor, then you're going to program the request to exit and put it on input number 3. So we'll move it from input 1 to input number 3. That way we could then get rid of these two triggers just by deleting them. Then we can say when the request to exit is activated, we're just going to disable the DoD so we don't get a door forced open, and we're going to disable the trigger on the door so the bell doesn't ring. If you were to remove them from this trigger right now, from this set of triggers, but you leave the request to exit on input 1, the request to exit will still energize the relay because that's how the triggers, because of degraded mode, because the reader interface is firmware programmed to energize the relay. So if you don't want the request to exit to energize the relay, you'll move the request to exit to input number 3, and then you'll delete these from our template. Then after I'm done customizing this reader, I could then save this reader as a template and then apply that template to my other doors. Remember, you need to use one of our predefined templates that supports pass-through if you want that pass-through feature on the door. And pass-through, again, is that feature that says, if I send lockdowns to my doors, either through a push button or maybe through the software and manual overrides, I send lockdowns to the door, people that have a pass-through credential in our software will still be able to get through the doors. If you don't use a pass-through supported template, then when you send your lockdowns, everybody is locked out. Nobody gets through the door. Now let's look at the template that we have programmed, or the triggers that we have programmed on the actual reader. If I open up the server room reader here and I hit my little expand button, my little trigger button there, on a valid access, what do you want us to do? Well, on a valid access, our template is programmed triggers to disable the DoD from reporting so we don't get a door forced open. Disable the DoD triggers that we just saw so the bell doesn't ring. Now, if your request to exit is a motion sensor, every time you walk through that motion sensor, so you get a valid access on the door, you're going to open the door, you're going to walk through the motion sensor. So we're going to tell the software on a valid access, we're also going to disable the request to exit from reporting when we walk through the door. So when you walk through the door, you don't get a contact active on the Rex. And we're going to disable the triggers that we just saw on the request to exit. So when you get a valid access and you walk through the door, you're going to walk through that motion sensor, and we're going to send another request to exit. We're going to disable the triggers on the request to exit on a valid access. So when you walk through the door, it doesn't happen again. On a valid access, we energize the relay to unlock the door, and we're going to turn the LED green. Now, what do you want us to do on an invalid access? We always have at least one item in there for an invalid access. We're just saying on an invalid access, turn the LED red. We do that just so that the reader interface isn't looking for a command from the controller to say, what do I do? Someone just swiped their card and got an invalid access. We just say turn the LED red. But you can program triggers in here that are more functional. Maybe you want to turn the LED amber. Maybe you want to turn on your sounder if someone gets an access denied. By default, we're just saying turn the LED red. The LED is already red, so it really doesn't do anything. But you can edit this. What do you want us to do if we get a valid access with special access privileges, right? If someone has a disability. By default, we're just doing the same triggers that we do on a valid access, but we're going to give people more time to get through the door. Again, you can make this more functional. Maybe you have an automatic door opener. So we can say, let's do all these items, but also let's energize another relay to open the door for certain people. So when we get a valid access with special access privileges, the door will open for them, right? We just add another energized relay. Which relay? The automatic door relay. And then you program in your amount of time. Now, we also have these other triggers in here. These are triggers that are programmed to make our pass-through or lockdown features or toggle features function. You don't want to touch these features. These are features that come in from the template. They're required in order for us to get our pass-through and our lockdown, or pass-through on the lockdowns working. So all of our triggers, all these events were programmed for you by the template. Now, I want to show you how we can program individual contact points, how we program individual relays, right? So if you want to customize a template, how does that work? So we're going to now go in and we're going to add our contacts. We're going to add our relays manually. I can close this here. Okay, exit out of this.